I never thought it would come to this. Lisa and I used to be inseparable. We were that couple everyone envied. Successful. Happy. Always ready for the next big adventure. But now, as I sit alone in our living room, staring at the wall of photos from our travels, I can't help but feel a gnawing emptiness. It's been creeping up on us, this change, so gradual that I almost didn't notice at first. The weekends we used to spend planning our next exotic getaway are now filled with separate activities. Lisa's always at the office, and I find myself making excuses to stay late at work too. Last night, we had dinner together for the first time in weeks. It should have been nice, but the silence was deafening. Our conversation never went beyond, past the salt and how was your day. I caught myself thinking back to when we'd spend hours talking about everything and nothing, laughing until our sides hurt. The passion that once burned so bright between us has dimmed to a flicker. I can't remember the last time we kissed goodnight, let alone made love. It's like we're two strangers sharing a house, going through the motions of a relationship we once cherished. I want to reach out to her, to bridge this growing gap between us, but every time I try, the words get stuck in my throat. I tell myself it's just a phase, that all couples go through rough patches. But deep down, a part of me knows this is different. The loneliness is the hardest part. Even when we're in the same room, I feel miles apart from her. I miss the way her eyes used to light up when I walked in the door, how she'd curl up next to me on the couch and tell me about her day. Now she barely looks up from her laptop when I come home. I keep hoping things will change, that we'll snap out of this funk and rediscover the spark that brought us together. But as each day passes, that hope feels more and more like wishful thinking. I stare out the window of our high-rise apartment, watching the city lights flicker in the growing dusk. It's Friday night, and once upon a time, Lisa and I would have been getting ready for a night out, trying a new restaurant, catching a show, or just wandering the streets hand in hand, talking about everything and nothing. But tonight, like most nights these days, we're home. I hear the faint sound of Lisa's fingers tapping away at her laptop in the study. I walk to the kitchen, opening a bottle of wine. Lisa, I call out. Want a glass? There's a pause before she responds, no thanks. I have an early call with Tokyo tomorrow. I pour myself a generous glass and settle onto the couch, flipping through channels aimlessly. I remember our last vacation 2 years ago. We went to Greece, a place we'd always talked about visiting. But instead of the romantic getaway we'd envisioned, Lisa spent most of the time on conference calls, and I wandered the streets of Athens alone, feeling more isolated than ever. Now, our conversations revolve around schedules, grocery lists, and household maintenance. The passionate debates about politics, art, and our dreams for the future have faded away, replaced by mundane discussions about whose turn it is to call the plumber. The physical distance between us has grown too. The casual touches, the spontaneous hugs, the lingering kisses all gone. I can't remember the last time we made love. So I sit here, nursing my wine and my thoughts, trying to convince myself that this is just a phase, that we'll find our way back to each other. But deep down, a small voice whispers that maybe, just maybe, we've already drifted too far apart. Few days later, I sat at my desk, staring blankly at the computer screen. The numbers didn't make sense. Our joint account showed unusual charges and withdrawals that I couldn't explain. At first, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe Lisa had some work expenses she forgot to mention. Or perhaps there was an error with the bank. But as I scrolled through the transactions, a pit formed in my stomach. This wasn't a one-time thing. The irregularities were persistent, happening over weeks. I couldn't shake the feeling that something more personal and deliberate was going on. I spent days agonizing over what to do. Should I confront Lisa? Hire someone to look into it? The thought of investigating my own wife made me sick, but the alternative, living with this gnawing doubt, was worse. Finally, I made the call. A discreet investigator promised to look into the matter quietly. The wait was excruciating. I found myself analyzing every interaction with Lisa, searching for clues I might have missed. Had she been acting differently lately? Was there a change in her routine I'd overlooked? When the investigator returned, I wasn't prepared for what he brought. Photos. Videos. Lisa with other men, much younger men. The evidence was undeniable, confronting me with a truth I'd been afraid to face. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My hands shook as I looked through the images, each one a knife twisting in my chest. There was Lisa, my wife of over 2 decades, in intimate embraces with strangers. Her smile, once a source of joy, now felt like a mockery. The anger came in waves, crashing over me and leaving me breathless. How could she do this? After everything we'd built together, how could she throw it all away? But beneath the anger was a deep, aching sadness. This was the woman I'd loved, trusted, built a life with. Now she was a stranger, someone capable of betraying our vows so completely. As I stared at the evidence of Lisa's infidelity, memories of our past flooded my mind. Our first date, our wedding day, all the little moments that made up our life together. When did it all start to unravel? Was there a specific moment when Lisa decided to seek comfort in the arms of other men, or was it a slow, gradual drift that I'd been too blind to see? I decided to confront her, paid investigator to let me know when she is meeting someone. I waited patiently for a few days and finally the ring called. It was Detective. He said that Lisa booked the hotel. As I arrived, I told the staff that I'm looking for my wife and showed them my ID. The lobby of the hotel was unreal. That sterile atmosphere, the forced smiles of the staff, all of it clashed violently with the storm brewing inside of me. I had thought about this moment endlessly. On the drive over, I ran through every possible scenario, each word rehearsed until it resonated with the truth I needed to speak. Or that's what I told myself. But now, as I stood there, my heart hammering in my chest, it felt like those plans had been made by someone else, someone distant and cold. Room 520. The elevator ride was an eternity, where relentless doubt and anger swirled together in a chaotic dance. When the doors opened, I caught a glimpse of myself in the metallic surface. My usually composed face looked foreign, as if pain had physically altered it, etched lines where once there was only calm. With clenched fists, I exited the elevator and forced myself to walk down the hallway. Each step was a countdown. Each door that I passed felt like another nail into something essential in me. There was no hesitation when I reached the door. I wasn't polite. The door swung open, revealing a scene that simultaneously confirmed everything and broke something deep inside of me. Two men, both barely older than our nephew, scrambling for their clothes. And there was Lisa, lying in bed, sheets clutched against her chest. Her face turned ashen the second she saw me. Everything stopped. Time, thoughts, breath all frozen. What the fuck? My voice was low, dangerous, but trembling. I didn't want to sound like that, didn't want to show anything, but it was impossible. Tom, she gasped. Her eyes went wide, darting between me and the two guys, who now looked like scared kids caught stealing candy. Get out. They didn't argue. They avoided my eyes as they scampered past me, making their escape into the hall. I could hear the other guests peering out from behind their self-imposed curtains of privacy, but I didn't care. They didn't matter. Only she did, and what she had done in that bed. The room felt too small. The walls seemed to close in, suffocating us both as I struggled to hold on to whatever composure I had left. My hands shook as I shoved the evidence at her, the photos, the statements. Such cold, unforgiving proof of her betrayal. You think I didn't know? You think I'm that stupid I spat each word at her, aiming to hurt, maybe? Or maybe just desperate to understand? Lisa flinched, shrinking back against the headboard like she could somehow still escape this. Tom, please, just listen. Listen? To what? Her, Lisa. To more lies. To more excuses. Her tears started then, wet streaks carving through her carefully put-together exterior, revealing something raw underneath. And still, she clung to the sheets with one hand, reaching out weakly with the other, as if that gesture could span the chasm between us. I was lonely, she whispered. Her voice cracked, the sound of it breaking me a little more. We lost us, Tom. I lost you, and I didn't know how to get it back. I wanted those words to mean something. I wanted to feel anything other than the void they left behind. But staring at her, with all the damage laid bare between us, all I could feel was emptiness. How could she wound me like this and then drag out some pathetic plea for sympathy when she was the one who shattered what little we had left? I can't even look at you right now. My voice was void, detached. Even I didn't recognize who was speaking. Suddenly the room felt too small, too suffocating. I needed to get out. The confrontation had taken everything out of me, and now, back in that hallway, with the door shutting behind me and whatever remained of my marriage on the other side, all I had was the heavy weight of finality dragging me deeper into some abyss. Not long after, I sat across from my attorney, with black hole in my gut. The manila folder containing evidence of Lisa's infidelity feels heavy in my hands, like it's made of lead instead of paper. So, Tom, You're certain about this? My lawyer's voice is steady, professional. I nod, my throat tight. He walks me through the process, explaining my rights, the likely division of assets, the timeline. His words wash over me, and I catch myself staring at a framed photo on his desk, a happy family, all smiles. Was that us once? I sign the initial paperwork, my pen hesitating for just a moment before scratching across the line. It's done. The divorce proceedings have begun. The following weeks are a blur of legal jargon and heated discussions. Our once shared home becomes a battleground, with Lisa and I barely able to look at each other as we argue over who gets what. The dining room table where we shared countless meals becomes a point of contention. The artwork we collected on our travels, now a reminder of happier times, sparks bitter debate. You never appreciated it anyway, Lisa snaps, gesturing at a painting from our trip to Paris. I bite back a retort, remembering the day we bought it. How we'd laughed and dreamed of growing old surrounded by memories. Now it's just another asset to be divided. Our lawyers mediate, but the process is exhausting. Every discussion feels like reopening a wound, salt being poured in with each disagreement. I find myself lying awake at night, replaying moments from our marriage, searching for the cracks that led us here. Was it when I started working longer hours? When Lisa's friends became her primary confidants instead of me? I remember the dinner parties where we'd sit at opposite ends of the table, barely speaking. The vacations where we'd retreat to separate corners of the hotel room, buried in our phones or books. As the legal battles wind down and the dust begins to settle, I'm left with an emptiness I've never known before. My house now feels cavernous and cold. I wander from room to room, touching familiar objects that now feel alien. In the quiet, I can't help but wonder, could I have done something differently? Should I have spoken up sooner about feeling disconnected? Insisted on counseling before things went too far? But dwelling on what-ifs won't change anything now. As I pack away the last of Lisa's things, I realize it's time to start looking forward. I reach out to old friends, accepting invitations I'd previously declined.